Evolution of Taylor Swift, from country roots to global dominance. From the very beginning of her journey, Taylor Swift was never just another aspiring artist trying to break into the music industry. She was someone who understood early that success would require more than talent alone. It would require vision, adaptability, persistence, and an ability to evolve in ways that would allow her to remain relevant across different eras of music and culture. And that understanding became the foundation upon which her entire career was built. Her early years were shaped by a deep connection to storytelling, a trait that would later become one of her most defining strengths, because instead of approaching music as just sound, she approached it as narrative, as a way to communicate experiences, emotions, and perspectives in a form that people could relate to, and that approach allowed her to stand out even at a young age in a competitive and often unpredictable industry. As her career began to gain traction, she entered the public eye with a style that was rooted in country music, but even within that genre, there was something distinct about her voice and her songwriting, something that made her recognizable and relatable, and that early identity helped her establish a strong foundation of listeners who connected with her authenticity and clarity of expression. Over time, however, it became clear that her ambitions extended beyond a single genre, and instead of remaining confined to one category, she began to explore new sounds, new styles, and new creative directions, gradually transitioning into pop music while still maintaining the core elements of storytelling that had defined her from the beginning, and that transition marked a significant turning point in her career. That shift was not without challenges, because changing genres can often risk alienating an existing audience while trying to attract a new one, but in her case, the transition was handled in a way that felt natural rather than forced, allowing her to expand her reach without losing the connection she had already built, and that ability to evolve while maintaining identity became one of the key factors behind her continued success. As she moved further into the global spotlight, her music began to reflect broader themes, addressing not only personal experiences but also universal emotions that could resonate with a wider audience, and this expansion in thematic scope contributed to her ability to connect with listeners across different regions, cultures, and demographics. At the same time, her presence in the industry began to grow beyond just music, as she became a recognizable figure in popular culture, influencing trends, shaping conversations, and contributing to the direction of modern entertainment in ways that extended beyond her own releases, and that level of influence is something that only a few artists are able to achieve consistently over time. Throughout her evolution, one of the most consistent elements of her career has been her approach to songwriting, which remains deeply personal while also being structured in a way that allows others to interpret and relate to it. And this balance between specificity and universality is one of the reasons her work continues to resonate with such a broad audience. Another important aspect of her evolution is her willingness to take creative risks, whether through changes in sound, visual presentation, or overall artistic direction, because staying relevant over a long period requires the courage to step outside of comfort zones and explore new possibilities, even when there is uncertainty about how those changes will be received. And in many cases, those risks have contributed to some of the most defining moments of her career, demonstrating that innovation and growth often come from the willingness to embrace change rather than avoid it, and that mindset has allowed her to continuously reinvent herself while still maintaining a clear sense of identity. As her career progressed, her influence also began to extend into areas such as industry practices and artist rights, where her decisions and actions helped highlight important issues related to ownership, control, and the value of creative work, and these contributions added another dimension to her role within the music industry. In addition to her artistic and industry impact, her relationship with her audience has remained a central part of her evolution, because maintaining a strong connection with listeners is essential for long-term relevance, and through consistent engagement, storytelling, and authenticity, she has built a level of loyalty that continues to support her career across different phases. This connection is not static, it evolves alongside her music and her public image, adapting to new platforms, new modes of communication, and new ways of interacting with audiences, and that adaptability ensures that her presence remains accessible and meaningful even as the landscape of media continues to change. At the same time, her career reflects a pattern of continuous growth, where each phase builds upon the previous one, creating a progression that can be observed through changes in sound, themes, presentation, and overall artistic direction. And this progression gives her career a sense of continuity that allows listeners to follow her journey over time. There is also a level of strategic awareness in how her career is managed, from the timing of releases to the presentation of albums and the way different eras are introduced, and this strategic approach contributes to how effectively her work is received and sustained in the public consciousness. And while much of her success can be seen in terms of numbers, awards, and recognition, the deeper measure of her evolution lies in her ability to remain relevant, adaptable, and influential over an extended period, which is a more complex and demanding achievement than short-term success. As the industry continues to evolve, her ability to adapt to new trends, technologies, and audience behaviors will remain an important factor in her continued presence, because longevity in music is not just about past success, but about the ability to remain aligned with the present while preparing for the future. Looking at her journey as a whole, it becomes clear that her evolution is not defined by a single moment or decision, but by a series of intentional steps that reflect growth, awareness, and a willingness to embrace change while staying true to core principles that have guided her from the beginning. And as her career continues to move forward, each new phase adds another layer to her story, expanding her influence, deepening her connection with audiences, and reinforcing the idea that evolution, when managed with clarity and purpose, can be one of the most powerful forces behind sustained success in the music industry. And as that evolution continues to unfold, it becomes increasingly clear that her ability to adapt is not limited to sound alone, but extends into how she presents herself visually, how she communicates her eras, and how she constructs a complete artistic identity around each phase of her career, creating a multi-layered experience that goes beyond just listening to music and instead becomes something immersive and cohesive. Each era in her career represents more than a collection of songs. It represents a carefully constructed chapter with its own tone, aesthetic, and emotional direction, and this level of intentionality allows her to guide her audience through different phases of her life and artistry in a way that feels structured yet organic, giving each project its own identity while still connecting to the larger narrative of her journey. This approach also reflects a deep understanding of branding, not in a superficial sense, but as a form of storytelling that extends across music, visuals, performances, and public appearances, all working together to reinforce a consistent message while still allowing room for experimentation and growth. As she continues to move through different phases, there is a noticeable progression not only in the complexity of her music, but also in the maturity of her themes, as her work begins to explore broader perspectives, deeper reflections, and more nuanced interpretations of personal and shared experiences, indicating a continuous expansion of both artistic and emotional range. At the same time, her ability to remain grounded despite global recognition plays an important role in sustaining her evolution, because maintaining perspective in an environment filled with constant attention requires a strong sense of self-awareness, discipline, and the ability to separate external validation from internal direction. This grounding allows her to make decisions that are aligned with her long-term vision rather than being influenced solely by immediate reactions or external pressures, ensuring that each step she takes contributes meaningfully to the overall direction of her career. There is also a noticeable consistency in how she approaches reinvention, where each transition is introduced in a way that feels deliberate rather than abrupt, giving her audience time to adjust and engage with each new phase, which helps maintain continuity while still allowing for innovation. And over time, this pattern of thoughtful reinvention has become one of the defining characteristics of her career, demonstrating that change does not have to disrupt identity, but can instead enhance it when executed with clarity and purpose. Another important element of her continued evolution is her ability to remain relevant across different generations of listeners, as her music reaches both longtime fans who have followed her journey from the beginning and newer audiences who discover her through more recent work, creating a broad and diverse listener base that spans age groups, cultures, and backgrounds. This cross-generational appeal is strengthened by the timeless quality of her storytelling, as the themes she explores often revolve around emotions and experiences that remain relatable regardless of time period, allowing her music to maintain its relevance even as trends and styles change. In addition, her adaptability to changes in the music industry, including shifts in distribution, streaming, and digital engagement, has allowed her to remain visible and accessible in an environment that is constantly evolving, ensuring that her work continues to reach audiences through multiple channels and platforms. There is also a level of consistency in quality that reinforces her position, as each project reflects a high standard of production, songwriting, and execution, which contributes to maintaining trust with her audience, because over time, listeners come to expect a certain level of depth and coherence in her work. As her influence grows, her role in shaping the direction of modern music becomes more apparent, not just through her own releases, but through the impact her approach has on other artists and the industry as a whole, influencing how music is created, presented, and consumed in the current landscape. And while her journey continues to evolve, the underlying principles that have guided her remain consistent, including a focus on storytelling, a commitment to authenticity, a willingness to adapt, and a clear understanding of how to balance artistic expression with strategic planning. These principles have allowed her to build a career that is not only successful in the short term, but sustainable over the long term, demonstrating that evolution in the music industry is most effective when it is guided by both creativity and intention. Looking ahead, her path will likely continue to include new experiments, new directions, and new phases that reflect both personal growth and changes in the broader cultural environment, and each of these phases will contribute to the ongoing development of her identity as an artist. And as each chapter is added to her story, the larger picture becomes more defined, showing a career that is not static, but continuously progressing, not confined to a single genre or era, but expanding across multiple dimensions of creativity and influence. In the end, her evolution represents more than just a series of changes. It represents a deliberate and ongoing process of growth, adaptation, and refinement, where each decision builds upon the last, creating a legacy that is shaped not only by what she has already achieved, but by how she continues to move forward and as that journey continues to unfold. One of the most significant underlying factors behind her sustained evolution is her ability to maintain creative control over her work, ensuring that her artistic direction is not only consistent with her vision but also protected from influences that could dilute its authenticity, and this level of control allows her to operate with a sense of independence that is rare at her level of success. This independence plays a crucial role in how her projects are developed, because it means that decisions regarding sound, themes, presentation, and overall direction are aligned with her intentions rather than being dictated solely by external expectations, and that alignment contributes to the coherence that can be observed across her body of work. At the same time, her willingness to collaborate with other creators has also contributed to her evolution, as working with different producers, writers, and artists introduces new perspectives and ideas that can influence the direction of her music, adding layers of diversity while still maintaining a recognizable core identity. These collaborations are often carefully selected to complement her style rather than overshadow it, ensuring that each partnership enhances the final result while preserving the integrity of her artistic voice, and this selective approach reflects a strategic understanding of how collaboration can be used as a tool for growth. Another important dimension of her continued relevance is her ability to engage with cultural moments in a way that feels natural rather than forced, allowing her work to reflect or respond to the broader context of the time without appearing disconnected from her established identity, and this responsiveness helps maintain a sense of immediacy in her music.